Hey guys! Tonight we slip quietly into the lantern-lit streets of Edo, where paper screens glow amber in the evening and wooden sandals click softly against stone. You're standing at the edge of the Yoshiwara district, clutching a small cloth bundle that holds everything you own, which, frankly, is not much. The air smells faintly of incense, river mist, and grilled fish from a nearby stall. Somewhere in the distance, shamisen strings hum like a distant memory. And before you take one more step, let me gently warn you, you probably wouldn't survive this life. Not the schedule, not the debt, definitely not the hairstyle. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love imagining us scattered across time zones while we wander through history together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are young, younger than you want to admit. The year is somewhere in the mid-Edo period. Under the steady rule of the Tokugawa shogunate, peace reigns across Japan, at least the kind of peace that comes from rigid social order and very clear expectations about where you belong. And tonight, you are being sold. It is not spoken that way, of course. The arrangement is described as opportunity, as training, as a better future. Your family's poverty has made the decision inevitable. The woman who meets you at the gate of the okiya, the Geisha house, does not smile. But she does not look cruel either. She looks calculating. This is a well-known historical reality. Many girls entered geisha houses because their families were poor. And the okiya paid an advance that relieved household debts. In return, you now belong, contractually, to this establishment until your own debts are repaid. You step inside. Tatami mats cushion your feet. The air smells of rice starch and powdered incense. Somewhere deeper in the house, laughter rises and falls like a practiced melody. You are not a geisha. You are not even close. You are a shikomi, an apprentice at the very bottom. The okasan, the mother of the house, inspects you briefly, your posture, your hands, your teeth. You resist the urge to fidget. You already understand something crucial. Observation here is constant. An unusual detail that often surprises people: geisha are not prostitutes. While they work in the pleasure districts, their primary role is as entertainers skilled in music, dance, conversation, and refined arts. This distinction was clear in Edo society, even if later foreign observers blurred the lines. Still, proximity to the licensed quarters means your life will unfold under lantern light and whispered negotiations. You are led to a small room with other girls. Thin futons line the floor. The hierarchy is immediately visible. Older apprentices move with confidence. Younger ones, like you, move with uncertainty. A girl whispers that if you cry loudly tonight, the okasan will add the cost of tissues to your debt. You suspect she's joking. You are not entirely sure. Historians still debate how voluntary these arrangements truly were. Some argue families saw okiya as viable paths to upward mobility. Others emphasize the economic coercion inherent in the system. From where you sit, knees tucked neatly beneath you, the distinction feels academic. You are here. The house rules are explained quickly. You will wake before dawn. You will clean. You will observe. You will attend lessons when permitted. You will not speak unless spoken to in formal settings. You will bow properly. You will walk properly. You will breathe properly. Breathing properly sounds easy. You'll discover it isn't when wearing a kimono layered thick enough to qualify as medieval armor. Outside, the streets of Yoshiwara glow softly. This district, established officially in the early 17th century, was a licensed pleasure quarter, carefully regulated by the Tokugawa authorities. Within its walls, certain indulgences were permitted, contained, monitored, taxed. Control is everywhere in Edo. You feel it in the tight knot of your obi. The okasan hands you a simple cotton kimono. Nothing ornate. That comes later, if you earn it. For now, you are fabric and obedience. As you kneel to fold your small bundle of belongings, you hear music drifting from a distant room. A shamisen plucks a melody, followed by a woman's voice, clear, controlled, elegant. That sound will become your world. But tonight, it feels impossibly far away. You lie down on your thin futon. The tatami beneath you smells faintly of straw. The lanterns outside cast soft shadows across the shoji screens. Your family is somewhere beyond these walls, counting the coins that purchased your future. You wonder if they are relieved. You wonder if they are crying. You close your eyes, listening to distant laughter and music blending with night air. Tomorrow, you will begin scrubbing floors. Tomorrow, you will learn how to kneel without wincing. Tomorrow, you will start climbing a ladder made not of wood, but of discipline. And already, as sleep creeps over you, you sense the truth. This life will demand elegance. But it will be built on endurance. And you have only just stepped through the door. You wake before the sun. Not because you're disciplined. Because someone nudges your shoulder with the firm subtlety of a future headache. The shoji screens are still pale gray with early light. And the house is already moving. Tatami mats whisper under careful footsteps. A kettle begins to murmur somewhere in the kitchen. You sit up quickly, heart racing for half a second before memory settles over you like another layer of kimono. You are shikomi now. Which means you are, essentially, human furniture that also cleans. The rules are simple. You wake first. You sleep last. And you do not complain in between. This is a well-documented part of geisha training. Before becoming a maiko, apprentice geisha in full regalia. A girl typically served as shikomi, performing housework and learning discipline. It was less glamorous mentorship and more character boot camp. You fold your futon precisely, copying the movements of the older girls. Corners must align, creases must be clean. If your fold is uneven, it will be noticed. Everything here is noticed. You shuffle to the kitchen to help prepare rice. The smell is comforting, almost cruelly so. You have not eaten yet. But you must serve first. A senior apprentice hands you a cloth and points toward the hallway. Floors. You kneel and begin to wipe down the wooden corridor. The boards are cool beneath your palms. You move slowly at first, unsure of rhythm, until another girl whispers, "Faster." The okasan walks early. You increase your pace. There's something humbling about polishing the path that others glide across in embroidered silk. You imagine it like being backstage at a theater, except you also pay rent to be there. An unusual detail many people don't realize. Formal geisha training required not only artistic lessons but strict etiquette mastery. How to open sliding doors silently. How to pour sake without spilling a single drop. How to laugh without showing too many teeth. Right now, you are learning how to wring a cloth without dripping on the tatami. Progress. Breakfast is simple: rice and pickled vegetables. You sit in silence, back straight, knees folded beneath you. Your legs tingle unpleasantly, but you keep your posture rigid. Across from you, a girl slightly older, already close to becoming a maiko, adjusts her collar with effortless grace. Her movements are economical, deliberate. You stare a moment too long. She catches you. Don't stare, she murmurs, not unkindly. Watch. You nod. Observation is survival here. Historically, the hierarchy within an okiya was clear and strict. The okasan managed finances and contracts. Senior geisha brought income. Maiko trained under designated mentors called onesan, older sisters. Shikomi existed at the base, absorbing everything like quiet sponges. Historians still debate whether the hierarchical system empowered women through professional structure or reinforced economic dependence within the pleasure districts. Likely both. You wash dishes after breakfast. Steam fogs your face. The scent of miso clings to your sleeves. By mid-morning, lessons begin for those permitted. You are not yet permitted. Instead, you carry instruments to the practice room, carefully, reverently. The shamisen feels heavier than expected. You place it down gently, resisting the urge to pluck a string. You are not allowed. An older instructor arrives, posture impeccable. The maiko kneel before her. You kneel further back, silent, watching. The first notes of practice ring out, sharp, precise. The instructor corrects finger placement instantly. Again. The repetition is relentless. Your fingers ache sympathetically just watching. An unusual historical fact: geisha training often included memorizing complex dance sequences tied to seasonal festivals and classical theater forms like kabuki. The choreography could change slightly each year, requiring constant relearning. You imagine trying to memorize all that while also scrubbing floors at dawn. You'd last maybe 2 days. During a brief pause, you are summoned by the okasan. Your stomach tightens. She sits upright near the ledger books. Numbers fill the pages: costs of kimono, food, training fees. You notice your name written carefully among them. Debt begins immediately. This is a well-known aspect of the okiya system, the cost of your upbringing. Lessons, clothing, and lodging are recorded as debt to be repaid once you begin earning as a maiko and later geisha. Freedom has a price tag. And you've barely started accumulating it. The okasan studies you. You will attend dance observation tomorrow. She says, if your chores are flawless. Flawless. You bow deeply. As afternoon light filters through paper screens, you return to cleaning. You polish the entryway stones until your reflection faintly appears. You align sandals near the threshold with obsessive care. Perfection is invisible until it's missing. By evening, your shoulders ache in places you didn't know existed. The house begins to transform. Senior geisha dress in layered silk. Hair is arranged with ornate combs. White makeup begins to appear like porcelain masks forming slowly in mirrors. You watch from a distance, carrying trays, holding doors, absorbing details. One of the maiko adjusts her obi, long and trailing. intricate and heavy. You notice how she moves carefully, like balancing architecture on her back. You briefly consider that modern office dress codes feel merciful by comparison. As the geisha depart for evening engagements, ozashiki, the refined banquet gatherings, you remain behind. You scrub. You wait. You listen. Music drifts faintly back through the night air hours later as they return. Laughter softer now, tired but polished. You are sent to extinguish lanterns. The corridor darkens gradually. You finally lie down on your futon, muscles trembling slightly. Today, you learned how to fold cloth, how to move silently, how to exist without drawing attention. Tomorrow, you will attempt dance observation. You close your eyes, exhaustion pressing gently against your temples. The life of elegance begins with calloused hands. And you are only on day 2. You step outside the okiya for the first time since arriving. And the world feels staged. Yoshiwara is not like the rest of Edo. It is enclosed, literally walled off and accessed through a single grand gate called the Omen. This is a well-known historical fact. The Tokugawa shogunate created Yoshiwara in the early 1600s as a licensed pleasure district, isolating certain entertainments within controlled boundaries. Containment creates illusion. You walk just behind one of the senior apprentices, carrying a folded shawl in case she needs it. Your eyes remain lowered, but curiosity keeps tugging at them. Lanterns hang in neat rows along wooden facades. Tea houses display painted signs. Courtesans, oiran, move slowly along the street in elaborate processions, their towering geta sandals clacking rhythmically. You try not to stare. You fail. The oiran are dazzling, ornate kimono layered like floral gardens. Hair adorned with dozens of ornaments. Their obi are tied in front. A practical and symbolic difference from geisha. An unusual detail many people don't realize. While both geisha and oiran worked within Yoshiwara, their roles were distinct. Oiran were high-ranking courtesans who engaged in romantic and contractual relationships. Geisha were professional entertainers, musicians, dancers, conversationalists, hired to enhance gatherings, not to sell intimacy in the same way. The lines could blur socially, but legally, they were separate professions. Historians still debate how rigid that separation was in practice. Especially in earlier periods, social reality is rarely as tidy as official definitions. You follow the apprentice into a tea house to deliver a message. The interior is warm, perfumed faintly with incense and sake. Men sit cross-legged around low tables, merchants in fine robes. Perhaps a lower-ranking samurai. Their laughter is polished but loud enough to carry. This is an ozashiki, an elegant banquet gathering. You keep your gaze steady on the floor. A shamisen begins to play from the adjacent room. The rhythm is delicate but deliberate. You recognize the melody from yesterday's practice. The apprentice you accompany kneels gracefully at the threshold. Her bow is precise, calculated. You mimic her movement a fraction of a second later. The senior geisha already inside smiles faintly at the guests, pouring sake with effortless control. This is art disguised as ease. You observe how she tilts the bottle, never too high. How she laughs lightly at a joke, never too loudly. How she adjusts her sleeve before plucking a shamisen string, ensuring the silk falls just so. You try to memorize everything at once. You feel like someone watching a masterclass in social navigation. An unusual historical note: geisha were often highly literate compared to many women of the era. They studied poetry, calligraphy, and seasonal aesthetics to maintain refined conversation with educated clients. In a world divided strictly into classes, samurai, farmers, artisans, merchants, the pleasure district functioned as a curious social equalizer. Merchants, officially low in status, often possessed significant wealth and spent freely in Yoshiwara. Money bends hierarchy. You wonder if that's why the district feels electric. A guest glances briefly toward you. Your heart jumps. You immediately lower your gaze further. You are not here to be seen. You are here to learn. The senior geisha begins a dance, slow, controlled movements, fan unfolding like a whisper of wind. Every gesture seems small, but the room's attention locks onto her. There is power in restraint. Historians still debate whether geisha artistry represented subtle empowerment within a restrictive society or simply another form of performance shaped by male patronage. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in the tension between the two. As the evening deepens, you are sent to fetch more sake. The streets outside glow brighter now, lantern light reflecting softly off lacquered wood. You pass an Oiran procession again. She moves in the slow, stylized walk known as the Oiran Doku. Spectators gather to admire her. For a fleeting moment, you imagine being that visible. Then you remember your debt ledger. Visibility is expensive. Back inside, laughter crescendos briefly. A merchant boasts about a recent shipment of silk. A samurai chuckles politely. The geisha steers conversation gently, like guiding a small boat through narrow currents. You realize something unsettling. Her art is not just music. It is management. She controls mood. She redirects tension. She ensures no one loses face. You try to imagine doing that at 16. You would trip over your own words in minutes. An unusual detail: geisha contracts often included strict curfews and behavior codes. Even within Yoshiwara, their reputations were valuable assets of the okiya. You glance at the senior geisha again. She never appears flustered. Not once. When the gathering ends, you help tidy the room. Empty cups, folded cushions, ash from incense burners. The guests depart in good spirits. The tea house quiets. You step back into the cool night air. Yoshiwara feels softer now, almost sleepy. Lanterns flicker gently. The apprentice beside you exhales quietly. Watch their eyes, she murmurs. Whose? Everyone's. You nod, unsure if you understand. As you walk back toward the okiya gate, you glance once more at the lantern-lit street. It looks enchanting from afar. Up close, you see the choreography. Tomorrow, you will rise before dawn again. Scrub floors. Observe more. Learn how to fold yourself into the background while absorbing everything. Yoshiwara glitters. But it is built on rehearsal. And you are only beginning to memorize the steps. You discover very quickly that elegance hurts. Not metaphorically. Literally. Your first formal dance observation becomes your first formal humiliation. The instructor sits upright on tatami, her fan resting lightly against her palm like an extension of bone. She does not shout. She does not need to. Her silence carries more pressure than raised voices ever could. You kneel among other Shikomi and younger Maiko, trying to keep your spine straight and your breathing steady. Again, she says. The senior apprentice begins the sequence, slow pivot, wrist turn, fan opening at precisely the third beat. The shamisen accompanies in soft, measured plucks. You mimic the motion a heartbeat late. It shows. Your sleeve swings slightly too wide. Your heel lifts too high. The instructor's fan taps lightly against your forearm. Too eager, she murmurs. You swallow. It is widely known that geisha training required years of rigorous dance study. Often based on classical forms influenced by kabuki and no theater. Precision mattered more than flair. Grace was measured in centimeters. Historians still debate how standardized dance curricula were across districts. But in Edo, formal schools dictated movement patterns down to finger positioning. You attempt the sequence again. This time you overcorrect. Too small. The instructor sighs softly. Your thighs begin to burn from kneeling. Your calves protest. You remind yourself not to fidget. You imagine explaining to someone in the future that you injured your legs from sitting too correctly. They would laugh. After dance comes shamisen. The instrument rests across your lap. Heavier than it looks. Your left hand presses against the strings while your right holds the bachi, the large plectrum. You pluck. The note twangs sharp and slightly off-key. A senior Maiko suppresses a smile. An unusual historical detail, shamisen strings were traditionally made from silk, requiring frequent replacement and careful maintenance. The instrument was delicate, but it demanded strength from the player's hands. You press harder. Your fingertip skin protests. The instructor corrects your wrist angle gently but firmly. Control, she says. Always control. You nod. You begin to realize something profound. The art of being a geisha is the art of containment. Contain your posture. Contain your laughter. Contain your emotion. Even your pain. By midday, your fingers ache and your shoulders tighten. You flex your hands discreetly when no one watches. Lunch is brief. Then etiquette lessons. You practice bowing to different ranks, slightly deeper for samurai. Measured respect for wealthy merchants. Perfect humility for elders. The Tokugawa social order is rigid, samurai at the top, followed by farmers, artisans, and merchants at the bottom. Yet inside Yoshiwara, wealthy merchants often wield social influence that blurs these lines. Historians still debate how much the pleasure district subtly subverted Edo's official class hierarchy. You suspect money makes its own hierarchy. In the afternoon, you practice walking in a kobo, the tall wooden sandals worn by apprentices. The first step feels unstable. The second feels like a dare. You wobble slightly, catching yourself just in time. A fellow Shikomi whispers, "If you fall in public, you'll wish you hadn't." You do not ask why. You imagine trying to navigate modern city sidewalks in stilts while wearing 20 pounds of silk. No thank you. An unusual tidbit many overlook. Apprentices were trained to move with small, gliding steps to maintain the illusion of floating elegance. Long strides were considered unrefined. You attempt the glide. You resemble a cautious duck. The instructor adjusts your shoulders. Smaller, she says. You shrink your steps further. Your calves begin to tremble. By evening, you are exhausted, but the day is not done. You assist in dressing a senior Maiko for an ozashiki. Layers of kimono wrap around her like architecture, inner robe, outer robe, decorative obi tied intricately at the back. The obi alone weighs more than your patience. An unusual fact, a full apprentice ensemble could weigh over 15 kilograms. And dressing often required assistance due to complexity. You watch carefully as the collar is adjusted to reveal the nape of her neck, a subtly sensual focal point in Japanese aesthetics. You realize even skin exposure is choreographed. Historians still debate whether the emphasis on the nape reflected broader aesthetic values or deliberate allure crafted for male patrons. You suspect both. When the Maiko stands fully dressed, she transforms. Her posture shifts. Her face becomes serene. You catch your reflection faintly in a lacquered surface beside her, sweaty, tired, plain. For a flicker of a moment, you wonder if you will ever look like that. Then you remember your ledger. Your debt increases with every silk layer she wears. After she leaves, you scrub makeup brushes and fold discarded cloths. The house quiets gradually. You sit alone briefly in the practice room, staring at the shamisen resting against the wall. You reach out and pluck a string softly. This time, the note rings clear. Just once. You smile faintly. Your fingers throb. Your legs ache. Your back protests. And yet, beneath the exhaustion, something else stirs. You are learning. Slowly. Painfully. Deliberately. Tomorrow, you will glide a little steadier. Bow a little smoother. Pluck a little cleaner. And one day, perhaps, someone will watch you from the corner of a tea house and think you make it look easy. They won't see the bruises. But you will remember every single one. You begin to understand that the okiya is not simply a house. It is a ladder. And every rung has a name. You wake before dawn again. But this time you rise a fraction of a second faster. Not because you are less tired, your thighs still ache from yesterday's dance drills, but because you are learning that hesitation is visible. The house hums quietly in pre-sunlight gray. You fold your futon perfectly. No correction today. Small victories feel enormous here. After sweeping the corridor and polishing the entryway stones, you are summoned, not by the okasan, but by her senior geisha. Your onesan, the older sister assigned to mentor you once you advance beyond shikomi status. She is already fully dressed for a morning engagement. Kimono layered in muted winter tones. Her hair is arranged flawlessly, and the faint scent of incense follows her like a signature. You kneel. She studies you in silence. It's widely documented that the onesan imuoto, older sister younger sister, relationship was central to a Maiko's advancement. A senior geisha would sponsor and guide the apprentice, introducing her to clients and teaching social nuance. Historians still debate how personal these relationships truly were, whether affectionate bonds often formed or if they remained strictly professional alliances built on financial success. From her steady gaze, you suspect both possibilities exist. You bow too quickly, she says softly. You blink. Too quickly? Yes, she continues. It looks anxious. You must bow like you have nowhere else to be. You try again. Slower. More deliberate. She nods faintly. You are aware that your entire future may depend on her approval. No pressure. An unusual detail often overlooked, when a shikomi officially becomes a maiko. The ceremony, called madashi, includes a formal public introduction where she visits tea houses with her wanisan, establishing social ties. You are not there yet. But this is the beginning of that path. Later in the morning, you are tasked with organizing kimono storage. Each garment is wrapped carefully in paper, labeled by season. Silk rustles softly as you lift and refold. You begin to grasp the financial gravity of this wardrobe. A single kimono could cost more than your family earned in years. Every stitch adds to your ledger. It's well known that apprentices accumulated significant debt for clothing, lessons, lodging, and food. Repayment depended entirely on future earnings. Freedom is postponed. Your wanisan enters the storage room briefly. She observes how you fold. Wrinkles mean carelessness, she says. You smooth the silk again. Heart pounding. Clients notice everything, she adds. Everything. In the afternoon, you accompany her, not inside the ozashiki this time, but to the threshold. You carry a small bundle of accessories and kneel behind her as she greets the tea house owner. You watch her smile, warm but measured. You notice how she adjusts her tone depending on who speaks. With the elderly owner, her voice is softer. With the merchant patron arriving behind him, it brightens slightly. This is not random charm. It is calibrated. Historians often note that geisha were masters of reading social cues. Their success depended on anticipating moods, smoothing tension, and adapting conversation fluidly. You attempt to observe eye contact patterns. When to laugh. When to lower your gaze. It feels like studying an invisible language. You briefly imagine trying to juggle all this while answering emails on a smartphone. You would absolutely fail. As evening approaches, the okiya gathers for a brief internal meal. The hierarchy becomes visible again. Senior geisha eat first, maiko next, shikomi last. You wait. Patience is part of training. Your wanisan speaks casually about a client who favored a particular seasonal poem during last night's gathering. You listen carefully. Poetry preferences matter. An unusual cultural fact, seasonal awareness, called kaigo in poetry, was deeply embedded in Edo aesthetics. Referencing the correct seasonal imagery in conversation signaled refinement. You make a mental note: plum blossoms for early spring, cicadas for summer. Do not mention snow in July. You would never recover. Historians still debate how much geisha shaped taste versus simply responding to elite preferences. Were they cultural leaders or cultural mirrors? You suspect the line is thin. After dinner, your wanisan calls you aside. Tomorrow, she says, you will assist inside the room. Your breath catches. Inside. Not center stage. Not yet. But visible. You bow, slowly, deliberately. She nods approval. As night settles and lanterns flicker, you sit alone briefly in the corridor, staring at your hands. They are rougher than when you arrived. Your posture is straighter. Your steps quieter. You are beginning to climb the ladder. But ladders go both ways. One misstep and you slide down. You think about the strict hierarchy, how every girl here once knelt where you kneel now. How every graceful bow was once awkward. Tomorrow, you will enter the ozashiki room not as furniture, but as background. A shadow learning to shape light. You inhale slowly. Control. Always control. And you prepare to take one careful step upward. You don't sleep much the night before. Not because the futon is uncomfortable, you've grown used to that, but because tomorrow is Madashi. Your official debut. You lie awake listening to the soft rhythm of breathing around you. The faint hum of distant night wind sliding along Yoshiwara's outer walls. Somewhere beyond the district, Edo sleeps under the steady peace enforced by the Tokugawa shogunate. But inside this house, anticipation is louder than drums. It's widely documented that Madashi marked the formal introduction of a new Maiko to the district. After years as shikomi, if deemed ready, you would debut in full attire, visiting tea houses with your oneisen to establish your professional presence. Historians still debate how young some girls were at this stage. Ages varied. Though mid-teens was common. By modern standards, it feels alarmingly early. You try not to think about that. Before dawn, you are woken gently but firmly. Today is not for scrubbing floors. Today is transformation. The dressing process begins in layers. First, white makeup. A paste is applied carefully across your face, neck, and upper chest. It feels cool at first, then heavy. You keep your eyes closed as a small brush traces red around your eyes and lips. An unusual detail many don't realize. Traditional Maiko makeup leaves 2 or 3 unpainted strips at the nape of the neck, accentuating its shape. In Edo aesthetics, the nape was considered one of the most alluring features. You never imagined your neck would become strategic. Your natural eyebrows are subdued. Painted ones replace them. When you open your eyes and glance into the mirror, you barely recognize yourself. You look porcelain. Composed. Slightly terrified. Next comes your hair. Unlike later geisha who often wore wigs, Maiko traditionally styled their real hair into elaborate shapes, wear shinobu for juniors. The process pulls tightly at your scalp. Decorative kanzashi ornaments are inserted with surgical precision. It's beautiful. It also feels like your skull is being negotiated by small determined hands. You are instructed not to complain. You do not. The kimono is layered next. Bright. Vibrant. Almost overwhelming. The sleeves are long and trailing. The fabric rustles softly with every adjustment. Then comes the obi. It is wrapped and tied at your back in a long, dramatic style that hangs nearly to your calves. The weight settles onto your spine like a permanent reminder. An unusual historical note, a full Maiko ensemble could weigh well over 15 kilograms, requiring careful posture training to carry gracefully. You take one experimental step. You nearly tip sideways. Your dresser steadies you without comment. You will not fall today. Your oneisen appears beside you, already dressed in subtler tones. She surveys you slowly. Remember, she says softly, you are not a child now. You swallow. You nod. The okiya door slides open. You step into daylight. Yoshiwara feels brighter today, or perhaps that's your nerves amplifying everything. Your okobo sandals elevate you awkwardly above the ground. Each step must be deliberate, gliding, controlled. You hear murmurs as you pass. Lanterns sway gently in the morning breeze. Shopkeepers bow slightly. This is Madashi. You and your one-isan begin visiting tea houses in formal sequence. At each threshold, you kneel, bow deeply, and introduce yourself. Your name is new, chosen for artistry, not birth. It tastes unfamiliar in your mouth. Inside one tea house, the proprietor smiles approvingly, a promising face. He remarks. You fight the urge to grin too widely. Control. Always control. It's well known that debuting Maiko often attracted significant curiosity and could increase the prestige of an okiya. Fresh talent meant potential future earnings. Your debut is not just personal. It is investment. Historians still debate how much agency young Maiko truly felt during Madashi. Was it pride, fear, excitement, resignation, likely all at once? You feel a strange combination of exhilaration and nausea. As you exit another tea house, a group of young merchants pause to watch you pass. Their gaze lingers, not impolite but curious. You focus on your steps. Left. Right. Glide. You remember yesterday's corrections about bowing too quickly. Today, you bow like you have nowhere else to be. By late afternoon, your calves are trembling inside silk layers. The makeup itches slightly. Your hair feels like architecture under tension. But you do not show it. Back at the okiya, you kneel before the okasan. She studies you carefully. You did not stumble, she says. Relief floods you. You did not speak unnecessarily. You nod. You will attend your first ozashiki tomorrow. Your heart leaps and sinks simultaneously. Tonight, you sit alone briefly before removing your makeup. The white paint dissolves slowly, revealing flushed skin beneath. You stare at your reflection, half geisha, half girl. The debt ledger has grown heavier. But so has your presence. Tomorrow, you will enter a room not as a shadow, but as light. And light, you are learning, must burn carefully. Because elegance is fragile. And now, everyone is watching. You discover very quickly that beauty is maintenance. Not inspiration. Not magic. Maintenance. The morning after your Madashi. Your scalp feels like it has been stretched by determined gods of architecture. You reach up instinctively to adjust your hair, then freeze. You are not allowed to touch it unnecessarily. The elaborate wear shinobu style must last for days. Which means you must sleep sitting almost upright. On a wooden pillow. Yes. A wooden pillow. It's called a takamakura, a small raised stand designed to support your neck while preserving the intricate hairstyle. It is less pillow and more suggestion of comfort. You position yourself carefully. Neck balanced on the narrow cushion. If you roll even slightly, waxed strands will collapse and you will face consequences both financial and social. You close your eyes. You do not move. It's a well-documented reality that Maiko used their real hair for traditional styles, requiring meticulous maintenance. Hairdressers applied wax to shape and secure the style, and apprentices were trained to sleep carefully to preserve it. Historians still debate how many girls mastered this immediately versus how many woke up to catastrophic hair failures. You suspect the latter. By morning, your neck aches in ways you didn't know were possible. You sit up slowly, feeling like a carefully folded screen being reopened. You survived. Victory. You check the mirror. The hairstyle holds. Barely. The senior Maiko nods approvingly. You did not crush it, she says. High praise. Makeup begins again. The white base spreads across your face, cooling your skin before tightening slightly as it dries. You are careful to leave the correct unpainted shapes at the nape, two slender triangles framing your natural skin. An unusual cultural detail, the exposed nape was considered particularly elegant in Edo aesthetics, drawing subtle attention without overt display. You adjust your collar slightly lower. You are learning how suggestion works. Your kimono today is vibrant, crimson and gold patterns cascading down long sleeves. The obi weighs like responsibility. You inhale deeply before stepping into the street. Your first ozashiki awaits. The tea house interior is warm. Lantern light reflecting off lacquered surfaces. Guests sit in anticipation, two merchants and a minor samurai. Judging by his crest. You kneel beside your one-isan. Your job today is simple. Observe, assist, and speak only when invited. The shamisen rests across your lap. Your fingers hover. You begin with a simple melody practiced endlessly during training. The first note rings. Clear. Your pulse steadies. It's widely known that music was central to a geisha's art, shamisen. Singing nagauta, performing seasonal dances tied to festivals. Clients expected not only beauty but technical skill. Historians still debate how much improvisation occurred versus strict adherence to repertoire. Some accounts suggest subtle variation was admired, but precision was prized. You choose precision. A merchant requests a popular tune associated with summer. Your mind races. Cicadas. Heat. You recall yesterday's lesson about seasonal awareness. You play. The rhythm carries gently through the room. When you finish, polite applause follows. Your heart nearly leaps out of your painted chest. Your one-isan smiles faintly. A samurai asks you a question. Where did you train? You answer briefly, respectfully, eyes lowered just enough. Control. Always control. You pour sake carefully, tilting the bottle at the precise angle you practiced. Not a drop spills. Small miracles. An unusual fact, geisha often memorized dozens of drinking games and light-hearted conversation prompts to keep gatherings lively without crossing decorum lines. One merchant attempts a playful drinking challenge. Your one-isan handles it gracefully, redirecting the mood with a joke so light it floats. You watch her timing. The rhythm of conversation is not unlike music. There is tempo. There are rests. You must never interrupt the melody. As the evening deepens, you feel the weight of the kimono pressing against your shoulders. The wooden sandals earlier left faint pressure marks along your feet. You do not shift ungracefully. Your smile remains measured. When the ozashiki ends, you bow deeply. This time, your bow is slow and unhurried. Your one-isan nods once. Back at the okiya, you remove the heavy layers piece by piece. Your shoulders feel suddenly light, almost unstable without the weight. You sit before the mirror, carefully dissolving the white paint. Your natural face emerges again. Slightly flushed. Slightly older. You examine your neck where the collar rested low. You survived your first evening. No spilled sake. No missed cues. No tripping in a kobo. You flex your fingers gently. They ache. Your neck throbs from the wooden pillow waiting for you tonight. You glance at it with suspicion. It stares back with indifference. Tomorrow, you will perform again. Tomorrow, someone new will evaluate your posture, your tone, your laugh. Beauty, you realize, is not a moment. It is repetition. Repetition layered like kimono silk. You lie down carefully, neck balanced on the takamakura once more. If you move wrong, your entire head becomes a financial liability. No pressure. You close your eyes slowly, body humming with exhaustion. Outside, lanterns dim one by one. Inside, your hair remains intact. And you begin to understand. The real brutality is not the performance. It is the maintenance between performances. And the night is very long. You wake before the ache does. For a split second, you forget where you are. Then your neck reminds you. The takamakura has preserved your hairstyle. Yes, but at the cost of what feels like 3 vertebrae. You sit up slowly, resisting the urge to stretch dramatically. Dramatic stretching would destroy everything you suffered through the night to maintain. You survive another dawn. Progress. Today, your one-isan informs you that you will attend a larger ozashiki, more guests. More complexity, more potential for mistakes. You nod calmly. Internally, you rehearse disaster scenarios. It's widely documented that geisha gatherings were often intimate but could range in size depending on the host's wealth and status. Merchants in Edo, despite officially ranking lowest in the Tokugawa class hierarchy, often possessed immense financial power and sponsored elaborate evenings. Money does not need a sword to command attention. You dress again, white makeup, red accents, collar carefully adjusted. Your kimono today features delicate maple leaves, signaling the shift toward autumn. Seasonality is everything. An unusual detail many overlook. Even subtle elements like hair ornaments changed with the months. Kanzashi reflected flowers in bloom. Festivals approaching. Or seasonal transitions. You glance at the small floral ornament pinned carefully above your temple. It must match the month. Imagine being fined for wearing April flowers in October. You would simply evaporate. The tea house tonight feels louder before you even enter. Laughter spills into the hallway. The scent of sake is stronger. You kneel beside your one-isan as introductions are made. A prominent merchant greets you warmly. A samurai nods more formally. A poet, yes, an actual poet, sits near the window, fingers resting on a folded fan. You begin with music again. The shamisen rests across your lap. You pluck carefully, letting the melody settle into the room like a soft fabric being unfurled. The poet watches you closely. Not inappropriately. Analytically. You feel like an exam question. When the song ends, he asks for a verse. Your breath catches. Poetry. Now. It's a well-known aspect of Edo culture that spontaneous poetry, often short seasonal verses, was admired in refined gatherings. Quick wit combined with aesthetic sensitivity elevated one's status. Historians still debate how much of this spontaneity was rehearsed versus genuinely improvised. You suspect it is both, a rehearsed readiness for improvisation. You recall the maple leaves on your kimono. You recall yesterday's lesson about autumn wind. You offer a short verse about leaves drifting across a quiet river at dusk. Silence follows. Then a soft murmur of approval. The poet smiles faintly. Your heart resumes beating. The merchant laughs and proposes a drinking game. You glance briefly at your oneison. She nods almost imperceptibly. You participate lightly, careful not to overindulge. Geisha were expected to pour and entertain, but not lose composure. Control. Always control. An unusual historical note. Geisha was sometimes trained to subtly manage intoxicated guests, steering conversations away from conflict, preventing embarrassment, preserving harmony. Tonight, you witness that skill firsthand. A samurai's pride flares momentarily over a minor disagreement. Your oneison redirects smoothly with a humorous anecdote about seasonal fashions. Tension dissolves. It's like watching someone gently untie a knot without anyone noticing there was a knot. You begin to understand that the brutality of this life is not loud. It is constant vigilance. By the third hour, your knees throb beneath layered silk. Your painted face feels stiff. Your smile is steady. A merchant compliments your poise. You bow slowly. Not too quickly. As the gathering winds down, you pour the final cups of sake. No spills. No awkward silences. No forgotten seasonal references. When you step outside, night air cools your overheated skin. Lanterns flicker gently along Yoshiwara's street. You walk carefully in your akobo, gliding despite the fatigue creeping into your calves. Back at the okiya, you remove the heavy kimono slowly. The weight lifts from your shoulders, leaving faint red impressions along your skin. You sit before the mirror and wipe away the white paint. Your reflection looks tired, but steadier. You survived a larger room. You navigated poetry. You helped maintain harmony among men who could, outside these walls, command armies or fortunes. Historians still debate whether geisha subtly influenced political and commercial decisions through such gatherings. Direct power, perhaps not, but proximity to conversation is never insignificant. You think about that as you adjust your collar for sleep. The takamakura waits patiently. You position your neck again with surgical care. You close your eyes. Tonight, your body hums with exhaustion, but beneath it lies something else. Confidence. Fragile. Earned. Tomorrow, there will be another room. Another melody. Another test disguised as entertainment. And you will step into it smiling. Because that is the art. And you are learning to master it. One controlled breath at a time. You begin to notice something curious. The more polished you appear, the more assumptions people make. Tonight's ozashiki is quieter, only 2 guests. Both visiting Edo from another domain. One is a samurai of mid-ranking status, the other, a wealthy rice broker whose sleeves practically announce success. They study you differently. Not like the poet did. More, inquisitively. It's widely known that in later centuries, especially when Western travelers arrived in Japan, many outsiders confused geisha with courtesans. Even during the Edo period, visitors unfamiliar with Yoshiwara's internal distinctions sometimes misunderstood roles within the district. Historians still debate how often geisha had to correct such assumptions directly versus relying on social codes to clarify boundaries. Tonight, you encounter the edge of that misunderstanding. After your opening song, the rice broker leans slightly forward and asks a question too personal for the room. Your oneison answers before you can inhale. Graceful. Firm. Redirecting. The tone shifts immediately, subtle. Unmistakable. Geisha entertain. They do not negotiate intimacy. The samurai nods slightly, as if reminded of etiquette. You feel the weight of invisible lines. An unusual detail many overlook. During the Edo period, geisha were officially registered and licensed as entertainers. Distinct from okiya, their fees were structured differently, and regulations limited their roles. Boundaries were not just moral. They were administrative. You pour sake carefully, letting the moment dissolve without tension. The conversation pivots toward travel and seasonal festivals. You breathe again. Control. Always control. It occurs to you how delicate this balance is. Your makeup, your kimono, the exposed nape of your neck, these are designed to captivate aesthetically. But your art is conversation. Music. Presence. Your elegance, not availability. And you must signal that without confrontation. Historians still debate how much agency geisha truly exercised in protecting those boundaries. Especially when powerful clients pressed too far. You suspect skill mattered. So did alliances. So did reputation. Tonight, your onison's reputation shields you as much as your own poise. You play another song, this one lighter. Playful, the shamisen notes skip gently like stepping stones across water. The rice broker laughs. The samurai relaxes. Harmony restored. After the gathering ends, you step outside into cooler air. The lantern-lit street feels calmer than your pulse. You glance at your oneison. She does not scold you. She simply says, "Remember, your value is refinement." You nod. That sentence carries weight. Back at the okiya, you remove your kimono slowly. The silk slides from your shoulders with a faint whisper. You sit before the mirror, dissolving white makeup again. Your natural face looks younger than the painted version. You wonder how many people see you, and how many see only the illusion. An unusual historical nuance. While Western narratives later romanticized or distorted the role of geisha. Within Edo society, their profession was understood with more clarity. The confusion largely intensified during Japan's opening in the 19th century. You think about how easily stories shift across cultures. You lie down carefully, neck balanced on the takamakura. Your scalp aches faintly. Your knees throb. But your mind hums louder. You are not just learning art. You are learning boundary management in silk sleeves. You are learning how to redirect without offending. How to decline without humiliating. How to maintain mystery without distance. Tomorrow, someone else will test those lines. Someone else will assume. And you will respond with music instead of argument. Because in this world, refinement is defense. And you are sharpening it quietly. One perfectly measured bow at a time. You begin to understand that silk is heavy. Not just physically. Financially. This morning, the okasan calls you into the ledger room again. The air smells faintly of ink and old paper. Rows of careful brushstrokes fill page after page, costs recorded with unwavering precision. You kneel. She turns the book toward you. Your name is written in elegant characters. Beneath it, numbers. Lessons. Kimono. Hairstyling. Makeup. Meals. Accessories. Everything is listed. It's a well-documented reality that apprentices in okiya accumulated debt from nearly every aspect of their training and upkeep. The investment was substantial, and repayment depended on future earnings as a maiko and geisha. Freedom, here, is arithmetic. Historians still debate how burdensome these debts truly were. Some argue successful geisha could repay them relatively quickly once established. Others suggest the structure ensured long-term financial dependence on the okiya. From your vantage point, the numbers feel abstract and enormous. You calculate silently. Then you stop. Math will not help today. The okasan closes the ledger gently. You perform well, she says. Continue. That is both encouragement and instruction. Outside the room, the house hums with late morning activity. A senior geisha laughs softly with a visiting kimono merchant. Bolts of silk lie unfurled across tatami like rivers of color. You watch as fabrics are evaluated. The patterns are seasonal. The dyes deliberate. An unusual historical detail, kimono patterns often reflected not only seasons but literary references. Famous landscapes, or subtle symbolic meanings understood by educated clients. Clothing is conversation before you speak. You realize each new garment adds not only to your visual repertoire, but to your debt. In the afternoon, you attend shamisen practice again. Your fingers are tougher now. Small calluses forming where silk strings press repeatedly. The instructor nods once when your timing improves. Small approval feels enormous. You glance at your hands and think about how they are becoming tools, not ornamental, but functional. You wonder briefly if future admirers will ever imagine the blisters beneath lacquered nails. Probably not. In the evening, you attend another ozashiki, this one modest but steady. A pair of merchants discuss rice shipments and taxes while you play softly in the background. The Tokugawa period is marked by relative peace and economic growth. Edo swells into one of the largest cities in the world by the 18th century. Urban culture flourishes, ukiyo-e prints, kabuki theater, refined entertainment. Historians still debate whether this urban boom empowered merchant culture or subtly destabilized samurai dominance. You pour sake and think, prosperity has layers. The merchant compliments your kimono's pattern. You bow. You think about its cost. You smile anyway. Later, as laughter crescendos briefly at a drinking game, you calculate silently how many evenings like this it might take to reduce the numbers in the ledger. 10. 100. More. The thought lingers. An unusual nuance. Some geisha eventually bought their independence from the okiya once debts were repaid, while others remained affiliated long-term due to loyalty or financial interdependence. You wonder which path will be yours. When the gathering ends, you step into the night air again. Lantern light casts warm halos across Yoshiwara's wooden facades. The district glows beautifully. It is almost easy to forget that behind every glow is a ledger. Back in your room, you remove the heavy obi with assistance. The weight lifts from your spine, leaving faint impressions across your waist. You sit alone briefly, examining your reflection. White paint dissolves under damp cloth. Your natural skin emerges again. You trace the faint red marks left by layered silk. Det feels similar. Invisible in public. Visible in private. You lie down carefully, adjusting your neck on the wooden pillow once more. Your scalp protests. You ignore it. You think about the numbers in the ledger. About how every note you play, every laugh you measure, every bow you perfect is slowly converting silk into solvency. Tomorrow, you will wake before dawn again. You will practice, perform, observe, refine. And somewhere in that repetition, the numbers will shift. Perhaps not quickly, but steadily. Because in this life, even beauty is accounted for. And you are learning how to balance elegance against arithmetic. You begin to realize that silence can be as powerful as music. Tonight's ozashiki is quieter than most, an intimate gathering for a scholar and two acquaintances visiting from Kyoto. The atmosphere is not rowdy or loud. It is contemplative. You kneel beside your oneison, shamisen resting lightly across your lap. The scholar's fingers trace the rim of his teacup before he speaks. Autumn, he says softly, gazing toward the open shoji where a faint breeze stirs the paper screen. It lingers differently in Edo. It's widely known that Edo period culture was deeply infused with seasonal awareness. Poetry, painting, kimono patterns, even menu choices, shifted according to the time of year. Sensitivity to seasonal nuance signaled refinement. Historians still debate how consciously cultivated this awareness was within geisha training versus how much was absorbed organically through repetition and immersion. For you, it has become instinct. You glance at your sleeve, maple leaves woven delicately in gold thread. You pluck a slow melody, letting the notes fall gently like drifting foliage. When you finish, the scholar nods. Do you write? He asks. Your pulse flickers. You bow slightly. A little. He smiles faintly and requests a haiku. You inhale. 3 lines. 17 syllables. A lifetime of discipline in one breath. An unusual historical detail. Geisha often trained in composing short seasonal verses. Not necessarily as published poets, but as conversational artists capable of quick, elegant expression. You recall the cool air brushing the shoji screen. The faint scent of incense. The soft weight of silk against your wrists. You offer. Lantern light trembles. Maple shadows on tatami. Evening breathes slowly. Silence follows. Then approval. The scholar inclines his head, visibly pleased. Your oneison's sleeve brushes yours, a subtle sign of pride. You feel warmth rise beneath the white paint on your cheeks. The rice broker beside him laughs lightly. She makes it sound easy. He says. You know it is not. Haiku is not simply wordplay. It is compression. Restraint. The art of saying more by saying less. Much like this life. An unusual nuance, some geisha became respected cultural figures in their own right. Known for artistic mastery rather than merely social presence. Their reputations could transcend Yoshiwara. Historians still debate how many such women achieved lasting recognition versus how many remained brilliant but undocumented. You play another song, Nagauta this time. Its melody longer and more expressive. Your fingers glide more confidently now. The calluses no longer sting as sharply. You begin to sense rhythm not just as sound but as pacing within the room. When to pause. When to let silence settle. When to fill it gently. The scholar asks about your training. You answer with modesty, describing dance lessons and poetry practice without embellishment. Control. Always control. As the evening deepens, the atmosphere remains composed. No drinking games tonight. No loud laughter. Just conversation weaving softly through lantern-lit air. You pour tea carefully rather than sake. The act feels almost ceremonial. You begin to understand that not all brutality is physical. Some of it lies in mental agility, in sustaining refinement under scrutiny, in crafting beauty from fleeting breath. When the gathering ends, the scholar bows deeply, deeper than you expected. Respect. You return the gesture slowly. Outside, the night air feels cool against your painted skin. Back at the okiya, you remove your kimono carefully, folding it with reverence. The maple leaves catch lantern light briefly before disappearing into storage. You sit before the mirror and dissolve the white paint again. Your face emerges, tired but steady. You think about the haiku. About how 3 lines carried weight tonight. About how words, like silk, can be layered carefully to create illusion. Historians still debate whether geisha subtly shaped literary trends within urban Edo culture or simply participated in them. You suspect the influence flowed both ways. You lie down, positioning your neck once more upon the wooden pillow. Your body aches less tonight. Your mind hums more. You are not just an entertainer. You are becoming a translator of mood, a curator of atmosphere. Tomorrow, the room may be louder. Tomorrow, you may play drinking games again. But tonight, you held silence. And it held you back. In this world of lantern light and ledger books, poetry becomes armor. And you are learning to wear it lightly. You learn very quickly that beauty exists inside rules. The Tokugawa shogunate governs Edo with quiet firmness. For over 2 centuries, peace has been maintained through strict social order, isolationist foreign policy known as sakoku, and careful surveillance of districts like Yoshiwara. It's a well-known historical fact that during most of the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, Japan limited foreign contact significantly. Trade was tightly controlled, and society was divided into rigid classes: samurai, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Historians still debate whether this long peace created cultural flourishing or suppressed innovation. Likely both. From your perspective, it means predictability. Predictable seasons. Predictable expectations. Predictable consequences. Tonight's ozashiki includes a low-ranking samurai who speaks proudly about loyalty to his daimyo. His swords rest neatly beside him, even here within lantern-lit warmth. You kneel gracefully. The presence of a samurai shifts the atmosphere slightly. Merchants may hold wealth, but samurai hold status. You must navigate both without misstep. Your one-isan begins with a formal greeting tailored precisely to his rank. You follow her tone. Controlled. Measured. An unusual nuance of Edo society, although samurai ranked highest socially. Many struggled financially in the later period due to fixed stipends and rising merchant wealth. This tension subtly colored interactions within urban spaces like Yoshiwara. You pour sake carefully for him first. Protocol matters. He asks about your training. About discipline. You answer respectfully, referencing dance schools and music instructors. He nods approvingly at the mention of structure. Discipline recognizes discipline. Later in the evening, the conversation drifts toward politics, carefully, cautiously. Topics are handled with the lightness of someone walking on thin ice. You observe how your one-isan avoids controversial territory with gentle redirection. A joke here, a seasonal observation there. Entertainment is safer than opinion. Historians still debate how politically neutral geisha truly were. Some accounts suggest they overheard and influenced subtle shifts in opinion among elite patrons. Others argue their survival depended on maintaining careful neutrality. You suspect neutrality is not absence of thought. It is management of expression. You perform a dance learned just weeks ago, precise hand gestures. Subtle fan movements. Your feet glide silently across tatami. The samurai watches closely. When you finish, he remarks, "Balance is strength." You bow. You think about how often balance feels like tension disguised as grace. An unusual historical detail. During the Edo period, sumptuary laws regulated clothing and display based on class. Yet within Yoshiwara, flamboyance thrived under controlled boundaries. Beauty was allowed within walls. As the evening progresses, sake flows more freely. The samurai loosens slightly, though never fully abandoning posture. You pour carefully. Never overfill. Never hesitate. When a merchant jokes too boldly, you sense the shift immediately. Your one-isan steps in with a playful song request, diffusing potential discomfort. Harmony restored. You begin to see that this life demands constant recalibration. Posture, tone, volume, even silence. Back at the okiya later that night, you remove your kimono with slow precision. The weight lifts, leaving your shoulders lighter but your mind buzzing. You sit before the mirror, wiping away white paint. Your reflection looks thoughtful. You think about the layers of rule that govern this world. Tokugawa laws shape the city. Okiya rules shape your day. Client expectations shape your evenings. And beneath it all, you shape yourself to fit within them. Historians still debate whether Edo's long peace created a uniquely refined urban culture or simply perfected social performance. You suspect the answer lies somewhere in your aching knees and steady smile. You lie down carefully on the takamakura. Your neck protests again. The wooden support feels less shocking now. Familiar. Predictable. Outside, lanterns dim across Yoshiwara. Inside, you close your eyes slowly. Tomorrow, another gathering. Another room of men navigating pride and politics. Another chance to glide without slipping. In this city of strict order and quiet rebellion, you are learning to move like water, flowing around edges, reflecting what stands before you, never spilling, never cracking, because under Tokugawa peace, survival is subtle, and you are becoming very, very subtle. You begin to understand that festivals are not rest days. They are examinations disguised as celebration. Spring arrives in a soft explosion of pink. Cherry blossoms unfurl along the riverbanks beyond Yoshiwara's walls, drifting like pale confetti through Edo's streets. The air carries the faint sweetness of petals and damp earth. It's a well-known historical fact that hanami, flower viewing gatherings, were immensely popular during the Edo period. People from all classes gathered beneath cherry trees to eat, drink, and compose poetry. Historians still debate whether hanami in Edo leaned more toward refined appreciation or enthusiastic revelry. You suspect it was both. Tonight, you attend an outdoor ozashiki arranged beneath blooming trees. Lanterns hang from branches, casting warm light against petals that tremble in the evening breeze. You kneel carefully on a woven mat. Kimono arranged just so. The fabric this time is lighter, patterned with subtle blossoms to mirror the season. Seasonal harmony is non-negotiable. An unusual detail many overlook. Geisha performances during festivals often included specific dances tied to spring themes, with movements imitating falling petals or flowing water. Your shamisen rests against your thigh. You begin to play. The melody is gentle, bright. Laughter rises from a nearby group of merchants. Cups clink softly. You glance upward briefly as a petal drifts onto your sleeve. You resist the urge to brush it away dramatically. Grace means minimal movement. A wealthy textile trader requests a spring dance. You rise slowly, adjusting the long sleeves of your kimono. Your okobo sinks slightly into the soft ground. You glide carefully, mindful of uneven earth. You imagine explaining to someone in the future that you danced in wooden stilts on dirt while wearing 15 kilograms of silk. They would assume exaggeration. You move your fan delicately, tracing arcs meant to mimic drifting blossoms. The breeze assists you. A fortunate partnership. Historians still debate how much nature was romanticized in Edo urban culture versus how much it was genuinely revered. In Yoshiwara, nature is curated, arranged, scheduled, framed by lantern light. Even spontaneity is rehearsed. When you finish, applause ripples gently. A guest compliments the way your kimono matches the blossoms overhead. You bow slowly. You think about how the pattern was selected weeks in advance. Beauty is preparation masquerading as chance. As sake flows more freely, conversation becomes livelier. A samurai quotes poetry loudly. A merchant challenges him with a playful verse. You are invited to contribute. You offer a brief line about petals floating briefly before vanishing. It earns a murmur of approval. An unusual nuance, the concept of mono no aware, the awareness of impermanence, deeply influenced Edo aesthetics. Cherry blossoms symbolized fleeting beauty. You understand that metaphor too well. By the third hour, your calves ache from standing and kneeling repeatedly. The ground beneath you is uneven. Maintaining balance becomes a quiet battle. You smile steadily. Control. Always control. A sudden gust scatters petals across the gathering. For a moment, everyone pauses. The scholar present sighs softly. Even beauty cannot linger, he says. You think about youth. About debt. About how quickly seasons turn. Historians still debate whether the pleasure district offered escape from rigid societal roles or simply reframed them under lantern light. You suspect both. As the gathering ends, lanterns flicker lower, petals cling to your hem as you walk back toward Yoshiwara's gate. Your okobo clicks softly against wooden planks. Back at the okiya, you remove your kimono carefully. shaking loose fallen blossoms. You hold one petal briefly in your hand before letting it fall. In the mirror, your white painted face appears serene. Your natural expression beneath feels tired. You wipe away the makeup slowly. The season shifts even as you sleep. You lie down on the takamakura again. Your neck aligns carefully. You close your eyes and picture petals drifting through lantern light. Tomorrow, the blossoms will begin to thin. Another festival will come. Another season. Another pattern stitched into silk. And you will glide through it again. Graceful. Measured. Ephemeral. Like the blossoms themselves. You learn that rivalry rarely announces itself. It arrives softly. Like perfume that lingers just a moment too long. The house feels different this week. Not tense. Not loud. Just sharper. Another Maiko has debuted recently, slightly older than you. With a sharper wit and a laugh that carries just a little farther than necessary. She performs well. Very well. It's a well-known reality that competition among Maiko and Geisha could be subtle but significant. Reputation-influenced invitations, patron loyalty, and ultimately earnings. Historians still debate how intense rivalries truly were. Some memoirs describe sisterly camaraderie, others hint at quiet maneuvering beneath composed exteriors. You suspect both are true. Tonight, you and she are scheduled to attend the same ozashiki. Your one-isan briefs you briefly. Observe, she says. Do not compete. You nod. Of course not. You are elegance, not aggression. The tea house is lively. A group of wealthy merchants and one poet sit in anticipation. Lantern light glows warmly against lacquered tables. You kneel beside your one-isan, the other Maiko kneels beside hers across the room. You exchange polite smiles. The music begins. She plays first. Her fingers move confidently, almost theatrically precise. She laughs lightly at a guest's joke. Her timing impeccable. You feel the shift in attention. It flickers toward her. Your pulse tightens. Control. Always control. When it is your turn, you choose restraint over flourish. A softer melody, a more delicate dance. You let space exist between movements. An unusual nuance of geisha artistry, subtlety often outperformed spectacle in intimate gatherings. Overperformance risked appearing desperate. You remember that. The poet leans forward during your song. He closes his eyes. When you finish, he nods slowly. The attention evens out. Not dramatic. Balanced. Historians still debate whether geisha consciously shaped personas to distinguish themselves, some playful, some serene, some intellectually sharp. You begin to realize you must find your tone. Not louder. Not brighter. Just distinct. As sake circulates, the other Maiko initiates a drinking game. Laughter swells. She excels at quick humor. You do not try to outpace her. Instead, you redirect gently when the volume climbs too high, offering a seasonal anecdote that brings the mood back into controlled warmth. The merchants respond. Not loudly, but appreciatively. After the gathering, as you both step into the lantern-lit street, she glances sideways. You play gently, she says. You bow slightly. You play brightly. You reply. It is neither insult nor compliment. It is acknowledgement. Back at the okiya, the air carries faint tension. The okursen reviews the evening briefly with both of you present. You both performed well, she says. No ranking. No favoritism. Yet you sense evaluation in every word. An unusual historical detail, geisha income was often tracked through invitation frequency and client loyalty. Quiet metrics determined long-term standing. You think about ledgers again. Reputation, too, is recorded. You remove your kimono carefully. Muscles tired but steady. In the mirror, your face, half white, half natural, looks thoughtful. You realize something important tonight. You cannot outshine every lantern, but you can glow consistently. Historians still debate whether the brutality of this life came more from physical strain or emotional vigilance. You suspect emotional vigilance never sleeps. You lie down carefully, balancing your neck on the takamakura. Your scalp aches faintly. Your calves hum from dancing. But your mind is sharper than ever. Tomorrow, there will be another room. Another comparison. Another subtle shift of attention. And you will step into it not trying to be louder, but truer. Because in a world of silk and shadow, the quietest flame can last the longest. And longevity, here, is survival. You notice the change in your collar before anyone says a word. For months, years, really, you have worn red at the nape. The bright lining peeking from beneath your kimono collar marked you clearly as a maiko, young, apprenticed, still in training. Now the red feels almost too loud. The ceremony approaches quietly, erikai. It is a well-known historical fact that erikai, literally, turning of the collar, marks a maiko's transition into full geisha status. The red collar of youth is replaced with a white one, signaling maturity and professional independence. Historians still debate how emotionally complex this transition felt for the women themselves. Was it relief, loss, pride, all three layered together like silk? You suspect the answer depends on the day. The morning of your erikai begins earlier than usual. Not for scrubbing floors. Not for dance drills. For reflection. Your one-isan sits beside you as your makeup is applied, still white. Still precise, but subtly adjusted. Your eyebrows are refined differently. Your lips painted more fully now. No longer the small bud shape of youth. An unusual detail, as geisha, makeup becomes less exaggerated than that of maiko. The transformation emphasizes sophistication over youthful brightness. Your hair, too, changes. No more real hair architectural styles requiring wooden pillows. You will now wear a wig, carefully styled. Yes, but less punishing. You almost feel sentimental about the takamakura. Almost. Your kimono today is subdued compared to the vibrant patterns of apprenticeship. Elegant, refined, the sleeves shorter. The obi tied differently, less theatrical, more controlled. When the white collar is fastened into place, you feel it physically. Cool against your skin. Quiet. You glance at your reflection. You look older. Not just in appearance. In presence. You kneel before the okursen. She nods once. You carry yourself well, she says. High praise. You and your one-isan visit tea houses once more, not as debut, but as declaration. You bow and announce your transition. The reactions are warm, approving. A merchant remarks that he will miss the bright sleeves. You smile gently. They served their season. You reply. Seasonality again. Even youth has its designated bloom. Historians still debate whether the shift from Maiko to Geisha granted more autonomy or simply more responsibility. Debts often remained. Expectations certainly increased. You feel both weight and lightness. At your first ozashiki as a full geisha, the room feels different. Guests greet you with a touch more respect. Your music is measured, less showy. Your laughter softer, less frequent. You are no longer novelty. You are consistency. An unusual nuance. Full geisha were often expected to cultivate long-term client relationships, managing schedules and reputations more strategically than apprentices. You sense the shift in dynamic. When a guest compliments your maturity, you bow with controlled gratitude. You remember the girl who once scrubbed floors before dawn, terrified of stumbling in a kobo. She still exists. But she is layered beneath silk and silence. Back at the okiya, you remove your kimono slowly. The white collar rests against your fingers. You sit before the mirror and wipe away makeup. Your face emerges, calmer, less anxious. You run your fingers along your neck, no longer bearing bright red at its edge. The takamakura sits unused tonight. You will sleep flat. You almost laugh at the luxury. Historians still debate whether geisha life softened with seniority or simply shifted its burdens. You suspect burdens never disappear. They transform. You lie down on a regular pillow for the first time in years. Your neck sighs in relief. The ceiling beams look the same. The house smells the same. But something fundamental has shifted. You are no longer climbing the ladder. You are standing on it. Tomorrow, younger eyes will watch you. You will become someone's one-isan. You will guide, correct, protect. The brutality of this life did not vanish. It refined you. And as sleep settles gently over you without the strain of a wooden pillow, you realize something quiet and profound. You survived apprenticeship. Now you must survive mastery. And mastery requires a different kind of strength. You begin to notice that adulthood comes with choices disguised as opportunities. One evening, after a particularly successful ozashiki, the okasan calls you into the ledger room again. The air smells faintly of ink and old paper, just as it did when you first saw your debt written neatly beneath your name. But tonight, the conversation shifts. There has been interest, she says calmly. Interest. Not curiosity. Not admiration. Interest. It's a well-known historical reality that some geisha formed financial arrangements with a dana, a wealthy patron who would provide monetary support in exchange for exclusivity or long-term association. This did not automatically imply marriage, nor did it reduce the geisha to property, but it did create obligations. Historians still debate how empowering or restrictive these arrangements were. For some geisha, a dana meant financial security and faster debt repayment. For others, it limited independence and shaped personal freedom. You kneel very still. The name mentioned is familiar, a prosperous textile merchant who has attended several gatherings. Polite, consistent, observant. You recall his measured compliments. The way he listens more than he speaks. Your one-isan sits quietly beside you during the conversation. This would reduce your ledger significantly. The okiya adds. Arithmetic again. You think about the silk kimono folded neatly in storage. About the music lessons. About the years of discipline. Freedom feels closer now, but not yet within reach. A dana could change that. An unusual nuance often overlooked. Formal dana arrangements sometimes involved contractual agreements specifying financial support for clothing, housing, and lessons. These relationships were structured, not impulsive. Still, structure does not erase complexity. You attend an ozashiki later that week where the merchant is present again. His demeanor remains respectful. He compliments your autumn dance with quiet sincerity. Your shamisen rests across your lap. You play steadily, but your mind drifts. Is security worth obligation? Is independence worth prolonged debt? Historians still debate whether geisha with dana experienced greater agency or became tethered to patron expectations. You suspect the truth depends on the individuals involved. After the gathering, he speaks to you privately, but not improperly. His tone is calm. I admire your dedication, he says. You deserve stability. Stability. The word lands gently. You bow. Control. Always control. You reply with gratitude but no commitment. Back at the okiya, you sit before the mirror, removing your makeup slowly. White dissolves into natural skin. You stare at your reflection longer than usual. You are no longer the uncertain girl in red collar. You are a geisha with options. Limited options. Yes. But options nonetheless. An unusual cultural detail. Some geisha who accepted dana arrangements maintained professional autonomy in performance, while others gradually withdrew from public gatherings depending on agreement terms. Every arrangement was different. Every consequence personal. You lie down on your futon, flat pillow. No wooden torture device required. You trace patterns on the tatami with your fingertip absent-mindedly. You think about debt shrinking. About obligation growing. About how elegance is often sustained by unseen support. Tomorrow, you will answer the okiya. Tonight, you let yourself sit in uncertainty. Because adulthood is not a single ceremony like erikai. It is a series of negotiations. With others. With circumstance. With yourself. And as sleep begins to settle softly over you, you realize something quietly sobering. Surviving this life is not only about endurance. It is about choosing which burdens you are willing to carry. And which ones you are not. You choose. Not quickly. Not dramatically. But deliberately. A week after the conversation in the ledger room, you kneel before the okiya again. Your one-isan sits nearby, silent but present. The merchant's proposal has been discussed carefully, terms outlined. Expectations clarified. You bow once. Slowly. You accept. It's a well-known historical reality that formalizing a dana relationship often involved negotiation between the patron and the okiya. Not merely a private agreement. Financial support would cover kimono, lessons, and sometimes even reduce outstanding debt significantly. Historians still debate whether these arrangements leaned more toward romance, pragmatism, or mutual benefit shaped by social structure. From where you kneel, it feels like mathematics layered with emotion. The merchant, your new dana, does not claim ownership. He does not change your professional title. He does, however, arrange for new silk to be delivered within days. Bolts of fabric arrive in rich, understated tones, deep indigo, smoky gray, subtle patterns woven almost invisibly into the thread. Your wardrobe shifts quietly, less flamboyant, more composed. An unusual nuance, Geisha with Dana often adopted more mature styles, reflecting both status and stability rather than youthful vibrancy. You attend your first ozashiki after the arrangement is formalized. Whispers ripple gently through the room, not scandal, just awareness. Reputation moves faster than lantern light. You kneel, shamisen resting against your thigh. Posture steady. You play. The music feels no different in your hands. But you feel slightly different inside it. The merchant watches you, not possessively, but attentively. He does not dominate conversation. He does not interrupt. He simply observes. You pour sake carefully for all guests equally. Control. Always control. Historians still debate how exclusive these relationships truly were. Some geisha maintained multiple patron relationships across time. Others remained closely tied to one supporter for years. You sense this will be a measured arrangement. One built on mutual understanding rather than spectacle. After the gathering, the merchant speaks softly. You seem calmer, he remarks. You tilt your head slightly. Experience, you reply. He smiles faintly. Back at the okiya, the okasan updates the ledger. You watch the numbers decrease. Not vanish, but soften. Debt recedes slowly, like tide withdrawing from shore. An unusual historical detail, some geisha eventually purchased independence outright once debts were cleared, while others remained affiliated out of loyalty or practical benefit. You wonder which future will unfold for you. That night, you lie down and consider what has shifted. Security hums quietly beneath your thoughts. But so does responsibility. You are no longer simply climbing. You are sustaining. Sustaining reputation. Sustaining artistry. Sustaining balance. Historians still debate whether the brutality of this life softened with financial backing or simply changed shape. You suspect brutality becomes subtler. Less about hunger. More about vigilance. Tomorrow, you will wear indigo silk. You will glide through another room of men discussing trade routes and rice prices. You will pluck shamisen strings with steady hands. And somewhere beneath layers of poise and partnership, you will remember the girl who once scrubbed corridors before dawn. She survived. Now you must survive comfort. Because comfort can dull edges. And in this world of silk and silence, dull edges are dangerous. You close your eyes gently. Your pillow is soft. Your collar white. Your ledger lighter. But the discipline remains. And discipline is what keeps you standing. Even when the weight shifts. You do not expect fire. You expect repetition. Music. Laughter. Silk folded and unfolded. But Edo is a city made of wood. And wood remembers flame. The smell reaches you first. Not incense. Not sake. Smoke. It is a well-known historical fact that Edo suffered frequent and devastating fires throughout the Tokugawa period. One of the most infamous, the Great Fire of Maireki in 1657, destroyed much of the city. Even after that catastrophe, smaller but destructive fires were common, earning Edo the nickname City of Fires. Historians still debate whether urban density or building materials played the larger role in the frequency of these disasters. From where you stand, watching a thin column of smoke rise beyond Yoshiwara's walls, theory feels irrelevant. Someone shouts in the street. Lanterns sway. You step outside with other geisha and apprentices, neck craned carefully, though not too obviously. Control. Always control. But smoke thickens. The wind shifts. Ash begins to drift down like dark snow. The okiya moves quickly, orders issued calmly but firmly. Important kimono are gathered first. Ledger books secured. Instruments wrapped. You lift a bundle of silk heavier than you remember. Not from weight. From consequence. The fire spreads rapidly, wooden roofs catching one after another in a terrifying chain. An unusual historical detail, during Edo fires, communities often formed bucket brigades. But large sections of the city were sometimes deliberately demolished to create fire breaks. Containment over preservation. You help carry shamisen cases toward a safer structure. The streets buzz with urgency now, controlled but undeniable. Guests flee tea houses. Merchants clutch scrolls and boxes. The scent of smoke sharpens in your throat. You try not to cough. A senior geisha beside you murmurs, "Do not run unless told." Panic is unseemly. You walk quickly but with measured steps. Your okobo strike wood rhythmically, absurdly composed against the chaos. Flames flicker against the distant skyline. The air grows hotter. Historians still debate how frequently Yoshiwara itself was destroyed and rebuilt across Edo's centuries. Records show the district was relocated and reconstructed multiple times after fires. Impermanence is not poetry tonight. It is heat. The okiya's valuables are secured in a safer building within the district. You kneel briefly to catch your breath. Smoke curls above rooftops, orange light dancing against darkening sky. The merchant, your dana, appears suddenly. His expression tense. "Are you safe?" he asks. You bow slightly. "Yes." He nods, relief flashing briefly before composure returns. Firefighters shout in the distance. The crackle of burning timber carries through the air like relentless applause. Hours stretch. Eventually, the fire is contained before reaching your block. Not unscathed, but spared. Ash settles over Yoshiwara like exhausted snowfall. Lanterns flicker weakly against smoky air. An unusual nuance, because fires were so common. Edo architecture evolved with lighter, more easily replaceable structures. Buildings were often designed to be rebuilt quickly rather than to resist flames permanently. You glance at your silk bundle resting safely beside you. So much beauty. So fragile. Back inside the okiya, you sit quietly, kimono dusted with ash. Your white collar now faintly gray at its edge. You wipe it carefully. Control. Always control. Historians still debate whether frequent disasters fostered resilience or anxiety among Edo residents. You suspect both coexist. You lie down that night. The scent of smoke lingering faintly in your hair. The pillow feels softer than usual. Perhaps because you know it can all vanish. Tomorrow, Lanterns will be relit. Tea houses will reopen. Music will resume. But tonight, you understand something new. Silk burns. Wood collapses. Ledgers can turn to ash. The brutality of this life is not only discipline and debt. It is impermanence. And as you close your eyes, listening to distant crackles fading into silence, you realize you glide through rooms of controlled elegance. But the world beyond those rooms is always ready to blaze. And survival means standing. Even when everything smells like smoke. The smoke fades. The music returns. But something subtle remains in the air, like a reminder stitched quietly into silk. You notice it in the way conversations linger a fraction longer on uncertainty. In the way merchants speak about rebuilding costs. In the way samurai mention duty with a sharper edge. Impermanence leaves fingerprints. Tonight's ozashiki is smaller, fewer guests. Softer voices. The recent fire has made everyone a little more reflective. You kneel gracefully, shamisen resting against your thigh. You begin with a subdued melody, nothing celebratory, nothing too somber, balanced. It's widely known that Edo period culture was deeply influenced by the concept of mono no aware, the gentle sadness of things passing. Fires, earthquakes, fleeting blossoms, all reinforced awareness of impermanence. Historians still debate whether frequent disasters made Edo residents more philosophical or simply more pragmatic. You suspect philosophy grows from pragmatism. A merchant speaks quietly about the cost of rebuilding his warehouse. You listen. You do not offer solutions. You offer presence. Sometimes that is enough. An unusual nuance. Geisha often became emotional anchors in uncertain times. Offering continuity through performance even when the city itself felt unstable. You pour tea carefully. The scholar present requests a melancholic tune. You oblige. The notes stretch slightly longer tonight, as if reluctant to vanish. You feel the room soften. Even the samurai's posture relaxes marginally. Control. Always control. But tonight, control feels less like suppression and more like steadiness. Your Dana watches quietly from his place near the lantern. He does not dominate the room. He observes. After the song, he comments softly, "Resilience is quiet." You bow. You think about the night of smoke. About carrying silk through ash. About how quickly flame rewrites the skyline. Historians still debate whether Edo's frequent rebuilding shaped its culture into one of adaptable elegance rather than rigid permanence. You suspect elegance thrives because nothing is permanent. After the gathering ends, you step outside. The street smells faintly of fresh timber where reconstruction has already begun. Hammers echo faintly in the distance. Life resumes. You walk carefully in your okobo, gliding past new beams rising where old ones burned. Back at the okiya, you remove your kimono slowly. You notice faint ash still caught in the hem. You brush it away gently. You sit before the mirror, dissolving white paint. Your reflection looks older tonight. Not aged. Just aware. You trace the white collar at your nape. You survived apprenticeship. You navigated rivalry. You accepted a patron. You stood through fire. Historians still debate whether the brutality of this life lies more in physical strain or emotional vigilance. You begin to suspect it lies in constancy. Showing up, performing, smiling. Even when smoke lingers. You lie down gently. The pillow is soft. The house is quiet. Outside, reconstruction continues under moonlight. Tomorrow, you will attend another gathering. Play another melody. Pour another cup of sake. You will glide through rooms as if nothing can disrupt the rhythm. Because that is your role. To be continuity when the city fractures. To be elegance when the world trembles. And as sleep begins to settle softly over you, you realize. In Edo, even resilience must be beautiful. And you have learned to make it so. You begin to hear whispers of ships. Not in the harbor, you are far from the coast, but in conversation. Foreign ships. Strange black hulls. Unfamiliar flags. It is the late Edo period now. And rumors travel faster than lantern light. It's a well-known historical fact that in 1853, Commodore Matthew Perry of the United States arrived in Japan with black ships, pressuring the Tokugawa shogunate to open its ports after more than 2 centuries of limited foreign contact. Historians still debate whether the sudden opening of Japan was inevitable or avoidable. What's certain is that it changed everything. Tonight's Ozashiki includes 2 merchants discussing international trade anxiously. Western clothing, one says, shaking his head. Imagine. The samurai present remains composed but silent. You kneel beside your shamisen, listening more than playing. Foreign influence feels distant, but not abstract. An unusual nuance. Even before full modernization, foreign presence began to influence fashion, industry, and social expectations within Japan's cities. Yoshiwara, though enclosed, is not immune to currents beyond its walls. You begin a melody softly. The room quiets. The merchant sighs. Even if the world changes, he says, there will still be music. You continue playing. Control. Always control. Yet tonight, you sense uncertainty more than usual. Your Dana listens carefully, his expression thoughtful. After the song, he asks gently, do you think tradition can endure? The question is not casual. You consider your answer carefully. Tradition adapts. You reply softly, or it becomes memory. He studies you for a moment, then nods. Historians still debate whether the geisha profession weakened or evolved under foreign influence and modernization pressures. You suspect it will do both. After the gathering ends, you step outside into cooler air. The street feels unchanged. Lanterns glowing, wooden facades intact. And yet, the future presses invisibly against the present. Back at the okiya, you sit before the mirror, removing white paint. You imagine Western travelers someday walking these streets, misunderstanding what they see, perhaps mistaking geisha for courtesans. Perhaps romanticizing what is disciplined labor. An unusual historical detail. After Japan opened to the West, geisha imagery spread internationally through photography and travel narratives, often simplified or distorted. Your reflection looks steady. But the world beyond Edo is shifting. You lie down carefully. The pillow is soft. Your scalp no longer aches from wooden torture devices. You think about ships on distant water. About treaties signed in unfamiliar languages. About how silk sleeves might one day brush against foreign fabrics. Tomorrow, You will attend another ozashiki. You will play shamisen beneath lantern light. But history has begun knocking at Japan's door. And even in Yoshiwara, you can feel the vibration. You close your eyes gently. Tradition hums softly in your chest. The future hums louder. And you, poised between them, must learn to glide through change. As gracefully as you once glided through smoke. The knock becomes a tremor. Not loud, but steady. The Tokugawa shogunate, which has ruled Japan for over 2 centuries, begins to fracture under pressure. Foreign treaties, internal unrest, shifting loyalties among daimyo. It's a well-known historical fact that in 1868, the Meiji Restoration formally ended Tokugawa rule, restoring imperial authority and initiating rapid modernization across Japan. Historians still debate whether the restoration was revolution or calculated political restructuring. From where you kneel in silk sleeves, it feels like the floor shifting beneath tatami. Tonight's ozashiki is subdued. Conversation circles cautiously around politics. The word, emperor, is spoken with new weight. A samurai guest appears unsettled. His stipend uncertain. His role evolving. You kneel beside your shamisen. You begin with a melody older than the restoration itself. Sound as continuity. An unusual nuance. During the Meiji era, many traditional professions were forced to adapt rapidly as Western clothing, architecture, and social norms began to spread in urban centers. Yoshiwara does not disappear overnight. But it feels observed. You notice subtle changes. Some younger men attend gatherings wearing Western-influenced jackets over traditional hakama. Haircuts shift. Top knots vanish gradually. You continue pouring sake with steady hands. Control. Always control. A merchant remarks that Tokyo, no longer Edo, will become modern. The name change itself feels monumental. Tokyo. Eastern capital. The scholar present sighs. Will there still be lantern light? He asks softly. You answer gently. Lanterns change shape. Light remains. He smiles faintly. Historians still debate whether modernization diluted traditional arts or invigorated them through reinvention. You suspect reinvention is survival. After the gathering, you walk through streets that look the same, but feel different. Wooden facades still stand. Lanterns still glow. Yet whispers of railways, factories, and Western embassies circulate like wind. Back at the okiya, the okasan discusses potential adjustments, new clientele. Perhaps foreign visitors curious about traditional Japan. An unusual historical detail. During the Meiji period, geisha were sometimes showcased as embodiments of Japanese cultural heritage to foreign guests. Preservation becomes performance. You sit before the mirror, dissolving white paint. Your reflection has witnessed eras. Tokugawa peace. Fire. Foreign ships. Now imperial restoration. You think about the girl who once feared stumbling in a kobo. She would not recognize Tokyo's future. You lie down quietly. Outside, construction hums faintly in the distance. New roads. New ideas. Tomorrow, you will attend another ozashiki. Perhaps with men who debate railroads instead of rice shipments. Perhaps with diplomats who speak through interpreters. Your shamisen will still rest across your lap. Your bow will still be slow. your collar white. The brutality of this life has shifted. Less about hunger. Less about fire. More about adaptation. And as sleep begins to settle over you, you realize something gently profound. You survived youth. You survived rivalry. You survived smoke. Now you must survive progress. And progress, like silk, must be handled carefully, or it unravels. The first foreign guest arrives with more curiosity than caution. He is not alone, an interpreter kneels beside him, translating softly, carefully, as though language itself might shatter if handled too quickly. The lantern-lit room feels slightly different tonight. Not tense, not hostile, just aware. It's a well-known historical fact that after the Meiji Restoration, Japan actively engaged with Western nations, and foreign diplomats, traders, and travelers began frequenting urban districts, including entertainment quarters. Historians still debate how much these early encounters reshaped the geisha profession versus how much the core traditions remained intact beneath the surface. You kneel beside your shamisen. You begin with a traditional melody, slow, steady, grounded in centuries of repetition. The foreign guest watches intently. His clothing, dark wool, structured, unfamiliar, contrasts sharply with silk and tatami. The interpreter whispers explanations. You wonder what parts of you translate clearly. An unusual nuance. Early Western accounts of geisha often misunderstood their role, sometimes conflating them with courtesans or exoticizing their artistry without grasping its discipline. You suspect tonight will add another version of that story. After the song, the guest applauds politely. He requests something authentic. You nearly smile. What does authentic mean when you are living it? You offer a spring dance, fan unfolding gently, sleeves flowing in controlled arcs. You do not exaggerate movements. You do not simplify. Control. Always control. The interpreter explains the symbolism of cherry blossoms. The guest nods, fascinated. A merchant seated nearby watches the exchange carefully, perhaps measuring how tradition can coexist with novelty. Historians still debate whether modernization diluted traditional art or elevated it as a symbol of national identity. You feel both forces pressing gently against your shoulders. The foreign guest asks about your training. You answer through the interpreter, years of dance, music, poetry. He seems surprised. Perhaps he expected ornament, not discipline. An unusual detail. Photography began spreading images of geisha internationally during this era, often staged to appeal to foreign fascination. You wonder if your likeness will someday travel across oceans in ink and paper. After the gathering ends, the foreign guest bows, awkwardly but sincerely. You return the gesture with measured grace. Outside, Tokyo's streets carry faint echoes of change, new street lamps appearing in certain districts. Western-style buildings rising slowly. Back at the okiya, the okursan discusses potential opportunities. Foreign curiosity could mean increased earnings. Increased earnings mean reduced debt. Arithmetic again. You sit before the mirror, removing white paint slowly. Your reflection looks steady, unshaken. You think about authenticity. About how what feels ordinary to you appears extraordinary to someone else. You lie down gently. The pillow is soft. Your neck no longer stiff from wooden contraptions. Outside, Tokyo hums with reinvention. Tomorrow, you may perform again for men who speak unfamiliar languages. You may hear your art described in ways you do not recognize. But beneath silk and shifting politics, your discipline remains unchanged. The brutality of this life once came from physical strain. Now it comes from translation. Of culture. Of identity. Of tradition into modernity. And as sleep settles softly over you, you realize you are not just surviving change. You are embodying it. Gracefully. Measured. Unbroken. You notice it first in your knees. A faint protest when you kneel too quickly. A subtle stiffness when you rise from tatami after hours of stillness. It is not dramatic. It is persistent. Years of gliding steps, precise bows, and measured posture leave quiet signatures on the body. It's a well-known reality that a geisha's schedule demanded long evenings, repetitive kneeling, controlled dance movements, and constant social vigilance. Historians still debate how sustainable this profession truly was over decades. Some women retired early, others adapted their roles as age shifted their physical capacity. You suspect adaptation is survival. Tonight's ozashiki is lively but familiar, merchants discussing trade expansions in modern Tokyo. A scholar lamenting changes to classical literature. A younger official eager to impress. You kneel smoothly. You feel the ache. You do not show it. Control. Always control. Your shamisen rests across your lap. Your fingers, once blistered, now move with practiced efficiency. The calluses are permanent companions. An unusual nuance, as geisha aged. Some transitioned from dance-heavy roles to focus more on music, conversation, and mentorship. You sense that pivot approaching. During a brief pause, the scholar remarks, "Your performances carry depth. Not youth. Not novelty. Depth." You bow slightly. The word settles differently. The younger official attempts a playful drinking game. But his timing is clumsy. You redirect gently, easing tension without embarrassment. Experience smooths edges youth does not yet see. Historians still debate whether aging geisha commanded more respect or quietly faded as younger Maiko emerged. You suspect both truths coexist. Back at the okiya, you remove your kimono slowly. Your shoulders feel heavier tonight. You sit before the mirror, dissolving white paint. You trace faint lines near your eyes, barely visible, but present. You do not resent them. They are maps. An unusual historical detail. Some geisha remained active well into later adulthood. Shifting roles to training younger apprentices or managing social networks rather than performing nightly. You lie down gently. The pillow welcomes you. You think about the wooden takamakura of your youth. How you survived on its narrow support. Now softness feels earned. Tomorrow, you will attend another gathering. You will play another melody. But you begin to recognize the shift. Not decline. Evolution. The brutality of this life once demanded endurance of pain. Now it demands endurance of time. And time is quieter, but just as relentless. You close your eyes slowly. Your knees ache faintly. Your mind hums steadily. You are no longer climbing. You are sustaining. And sustaining requires a different kind of strength. one that moves slower, but deeper. You notice her watching you the way you once watched your oneisen. Small, sharp eyes from the edge of the corridor. Quick hands folding cloth with too much determination. A girl recently sold into the okiya, thin wrists. Nervous posture, trying not to breathe too loudly. You see yourself in her. It is widely known that senior geisha eventually took on the role of oneisen, guiding younger apprentices through the same rigid training they once endured. Historians still debate whether this mentorship softened over time or remained just as strict from generation to generation. You suspect softness and severity coexist. The girl kneels too quickly during morning greeting. Her bow snaps forward with anxious speed. You remember being told the same thing. Slower, you murmur gently, like you have nowhere else to be. She blinks. Nods. Tries again. Better. An unusual nuance. Mentorship relationships often shaped not only skill development but reputation. As senior geisha introduced their juniors to clients and navigated early social pitfalls for them. You feel the weight of that responsibility. Tonight, you bring her to observe her first ozashiki from the threshold. She carries a small bundle nervously, eyes wide at lantern light and layered silk. You kneel gracefully. She kneels half a breath too late. You feel her anxiety ripple like wind against paper screens. Control. Always control. You begin a gentle melody on shamisen, steady. Reassuring. The guests laugh softly at a drinking game, unaware of the quiet mentorship unfolding behind them. During a pause, you lean slightly toward her. Watch their eyes. You whisper. The same words once given to you. She nods. An unusual historical detail, the structure of oneisen imuoto relationships often extended beyond training, shaping social identity within Yoshiwara's tightly woven networks. You guide her posture when she shifts awkwardly. You steady her sleeve when it drifts too far forward. You see how quickly she absorbs correction. Historians still debate whether this system empowered women by creating female-led professional hierarchies or reinforced financial entanglement through dependency. From here, it feels like both. After the gathering, the young apprentice exhales loudly outside in the night air. You almost laugh. Not so loud. You remind gently. She covers her mouth, embarrassed. Back at the okiya, you help her remove the borrowed kimono. Her shoulders are red from the weight. You remember that sensation vividly. She looks at you with something like awe. How do you make it look easy? She asks quietly. You consider the answer. I don't, you say. I make it look controlled. She frowns thoughtfully. Good. Understanding is better than illusion. You sit before your mirror later, dissolving white paint. Your reflection shows calm lines of experience. You think about how once you were the trembling girl watching from corridors. Now you are the steady presence others lean toward. The brutality of this life did not vanish with maturity. It became legacy. You lie down gently. Your pillow is soft. Your knees ache faintly. But your heart feels anchored. Tomorrow, you will correct her bow again. Adjust her sleeve. Whisper reminders about breathing and blinking. Because survival in this world is not solitary. It is passed down. One slow, measured movement at a time. And tonight, as sleep settles over you, You realize something quietly profound. You are no longer just surviving elegance. You are teaching it. You begin to measure time differently. Not in years. Not in seasons. In farewells. Another familiar tea house closes this month, its owner retiring. Unable to compete with newer establishments that now experiment with Western furnishings and gas lamps instead of paper lanterns. Tokyo hums louder than Edo ever did. It's a well-known historical reality that during the Meiji era, rapid industrialization transformed urban landscapes, gas lighting, brick buildings, railways, and Western-style architecture altering the visual rhythm of cities. Historians still debate whether this modernization represented progress at the cost of cultural erosion, or renewal born from necessity. You kneel in a room tonight lit partly by lantern, partly by an unfamiliar glass fixture glowing steadily overhead. The light feels harsher, less forgiving. Your shamisen rests across your lap. You begin a melody older than the city's new name. The younger guests listen with polite fascination. Some wear tailored jackets over kimono. One speaks casually of railway schedules. You pour sake carefully. Control. Always control. An unusual nuance, as Japan modernized. Geisha districts navigated a delicate balance between preserving tradition and adapting to evolving tastes. Sometimes incorporating new musical influences or adjusting performance formats. You feel that tension in the air. One guest requests a Western tune. You do not know it. You smile gently. I can offer something older. You reply. He nods. Curiosity replaces insistence. Historians still debate whether cultural preservation is resistance or adaptation in disguise. You suspect preservation requires quiet flexibility. After the gathering, you step outside. The street glows under mixed light, lantern and gas, shadow and brightness. You pass the young apprentice you now mentor. She asks softly, "Will things disappear?" You consider carefully. Some things. You answer. Others change shape. She nods, absorbing the ambiguity. Back at the okiya, you remove your kimono slowly. The silk feels familiar against your skin, comforting in its predictability. You sit before the mirror, dissolving white paint. Your reflection carries decades now. Not dramatic lines, but depth. You think about the wooden pillow of your youth. About fires. About foreign ships. About the first time you played shamisen without trembling. The brutality of this life was never only physical. It was constancy amid change. You lie down gently. Outside, Tokyo hums with progress. Inside, tatami still holds your weight. Tomorrow, perhaps another tea house will close. Another railway will open. Another apprentice will stumble in a kobo. And you will glide through it all. Not unchanged, but unbroken. Because survival here has never meant resisting change. It has meant bending without snapping. And tonight, as sleep drifts softly toward you, you realize something steady and calm. The city may reinvent itself, but discipline remains timeless. And you are woven from it. You notice the invitations arrive less frequently now. Not absent. Not gone. Just spaced. There are newer faces in Tokyo's districts, bright sleeves, quicker laughter, lighter steps in fresher kobo. You do not resent them. You remember being them. It's widely known that in the later Meiji period, tastes shifted alongside modernization. Western-style entertainment, theaters, cafes, and dance halls began attracting urban audiences. Historians still debate whether traditional geisha districts declined sharply or gradually adapted in response to these cultural changes. From where you sit, adjusting the fold of your kimono before an evening engagement. It feels gradual, subtle, like autumn arriving without announcement. Tonight's ozashiki is smaller, an older merchant, a retired samurai, and your loyal dana. Conversation moves more slowly now. The merchant speaks nostalgically about Edo's lantern-lit nights. The samurai recalls when swords were symbols of living authority, not relics. You kneel gracefully. Your knees protest faintly. You ignore it. Control. Always control. You begin a melody that once echoed through crowded rooms. It fills the smaller space gently, without strain. An unusual nuance, as geisha matured. Many focused increasingly on intimate gatherings rather than lively public banquets, cultivating loyal long-term patrons instead of chasing novelty. You feel the shift in your own presence. Less sparkle. More steadiness. The retired samurai sighs softly. The world moves quickly now, he says. You nod slightly. But rhythm remains. You reply. He smiles. Historians still debate whether nostalgia during modernization romanticized the past unfairly or preserved valuable memory. You suspect both can coexist. After the gathering, your dana lingers. He speaks quietly of investments in new textile factories. Change funds stability. You listen attentively. Your ledger has long been cleared. You remain in the okiya by choice now, not obligation. That realization sits differently in your chest. Back at the house, the young apprentice you mentor practices bowing in the hallway. She corrects herself before you speak. Progress. You sit before the mirror once more, dissolving white paint. Your face beneath carries quiet authority. You do not wear youth's vibrancy anymore. You wear experience. The brutality of this life has softened in one sense. No more wooden pillows. No more punishing debut nerves. But it has deepened in another. It demands dignity in aging. You lie down gently. Outside, Tokyo glows with electric promise. Inside, tatami and silk still define your world. Tomorrow, perhaps fewer invitations will arrive. Perhaps a new cafe will draw younger crowds. But someone will still seek music under lantern light. Someone will still want the steady rhythm of tradition. And you will answer. Not loudly. Not desperately. But consistently. Because survival is not about outshining every new flame. It is about burning long. And tonight, as sleep folds around you softly, you understand. Longevity is its own kind of brilliance. And you have earned it. You begin to feel the weight not in your body, but in your memory. The okiya is quieter now. Not empty, not failing, just different. The young apprentice you once steadied at the threshold now attends ozashiki without trembling. Her bow is slower, her smile measured. She has begun correcting another girl's sleeve. You watch from the corridor. It is widely known that many senior geisha eventually transitioned into advisory or managerial roles within the okiya. Guiding finances, mentoring apprentices, and preserving networks of loyal clients. Historians still debate whether this shift granted greater authority or quietly marked the beginning of retirement. You suspect both can exist at once. Tonight, you are not the central performer. You attend, but you let her begin the melody. Her shamisen notes ring clear. You remember when yours first did. You pour sake only when necessary. You speak when invited. You let the rhythm belong to her. Control. Always control. An unusual nuance. Prestige in later years often came from reputation rather than visibility. A respected geisha's presence alone could elevate a gathering. You feel that dynamic tonight. A merchant glances toward you before complimenting the younger performer, as if seeking silent approval. You incline your head slightly. Permission granted. Historians still debate whether mentorship sustained traditional arts more effectively than formal institutions during Japan's modernization. You suspect living transmission carries weight no textbook can replicate. After the gathering, the young geisha beams faintly in the street's lantern glow. You barely spoke, she says, half apologetic. You barely needed me, you reply. She absorbs that quietly. Back at the okiya, you sit before the ledger, not as debtor, but as advisor. You review expenses calmly, guiding the okasan's niece through calculations. Silk costs more now. Foreign dyes shift pricing. Modernity affects even thread. You think about the girl who once stared at inked numbers with dread. How far you have traveled without leaving the district. The brutality of this life once felt immediate, aching knees. Strict corrections. Heavy collars. Now it feels reflective. A long echo rather than sharp impact. You lie down gently. Your body rests easier than it once did. Your mind carries decades. Outside, Tokyo's streets hum with electric light and distant train whistles. Inside, the okiya breathes steadily. Tomorrow, you may attend fewer gatherings. You may sit more often in corridors than center rooms. But the rhythm continues. The shamisen will sound. The silk will rustle. The bows will slow and deepen. And you will remain, not as flame, but as ember. Steady. Glowing softly beneath layers of time. Because survival is not only about endurance. It is about becoming foundation. And tonight, as sleep draws you inward gently, you realize you are no longer striving. You are sustaining. And sustaining is quieter, but no less powerful. You begin to understand that endings rarely announce themselves. They soften first. Like silk worn thin at the fold. You attend fewer ozashiki now, not because you are unwelcome, but because you choose your evenings carefully. Your knees have become honest with you. Your voice prefers measured songs to spirited ones. It is widely known that many geisha retired quietly rather than dramatically. Often stepping away from performance while remaining connected to the okiya or district in advisory roles. Historians still debate whether retirement was a relief, a loss, or simply another adaptation. You suspect it depends on what one values most, applause or continuity. Tonight, you attend what may be one of your final formal gatherings as primary performer. The room is intimate. Familiar faces. Your Dana sits quietly near the lantern. Older now himself, hair touched with silver. The young geisha you once mentored kneels across from you. watching with reverence rather than rivalry. You begin a melody you have played for decades. The notes come easily. They no longer require concentration. They are memory shaped into sound. An unusual nuance, in later years. Some geisha were prized specifically for depth of interpretation rather than technical flourish. Time gave music gravity. You feel that gravity tonight. You do not rush. You allow silence to rest between phrases. You pour sake with steady hands. Your bow is slower than ever, unhurried. Complete. Control. Always control. The merchant who once debated rice prices with youthful energy now listens more than he speaks. The scholar's hair has thinned, but his eyes remain thoughtful. Tokyo beyond these walls has electric light, rail lines, foreign embassies. But here, tatami still holds the same rhythm. Historians still debate whether districts like Yoshiwara lost their essence as Japan modernized or preserved a curated version of it for nostalgia's sake. You suspect essence lives in practice, not architecture. After the final song, silence lingers. Not awkward. Full. Your dana bows deeply. Not as patron. As witness. You return the gesture. Back at the okiya, you remove your kimono slowly. The silk feels lighter than it once did, or perhaps you do. You sit before the mirror one more time, dissolving white paint with deliberate care. Your natural face emerges fully. Lines of time visible. Calm. You trace your white collar gently. Tomorrow, it may hang unused. The brutality of this life once demanded relentless effort. Now it asks for graceful departure. You lie down softly. The pillow embraces you. Outside, Tokyo hums without waiting. Inside, the okiya sleeps. Tomorrow, you will rise not for performance, but for guidance. The shamisen may rest more often against the wall. The akobo may remain aligned near the threshold. But your presence will linger in how others bow. In how they pour. In how they glide without haste. And as sleep drifts gently toward you, you realize something deeply steady. Survival is not endless performance. It is knowing when to step back. Without stepping away from yourself. You wake before dawn, not because you must, but because you always have. The house is quieter now. Younger voices murmur softly in distant rooms. Fabric rustles. Someone laughs too loudly and is gently corrected. You sit upright slowly, feeling the weight of years in your joints, not painfully, but honestly. It is widely known that many former geisha remained in the district as instructors, managers, or quiet cultural anchors long after retiring from performance. Historians still debate how visible these elder figures were in records, often overshadowed by youthful imagery preserved in photographs. You suspect invisibility is not absence. You walk through the corridor barefoot. No akobo required. The tatami feels familiar beneath your feet, woven straw that has supported your entire life. You pause outside a practice room. The young geisha you once mentored now guides another girl. Slower, she says gently, like you have nowhere else to be. You smile. The words echo through generations. An unusual nuance. Traditional arts survive through repetition of subtle instruction. Often unchanged across decades despite shifting political and social landscapes. You enter quietly. The younger girls bow. Not deeply. but respectfully. You correct a wrist angle during shamisen practice. You adjust a collar by mere centimeters. Control. Always control. Later, you sit with the okasan reviewing accounts, not because you must repay anything, but because experience lends perspective. Modern fabrics cost more. Foreign dyes alter supply routes. The city hums differently now. Tokyo's streets outside carry electric light and carriage wheels alongside early motorcars. Yet within these walls, the rhythm persists. Historians still debate whether modernization ultimately marginalized traditional districts or preserved them as curated heritage. You suspect both truths intertwine. In the evening, you sit in the corridor as a gathering begins without you at its center. You hear laughter rise. You hear shamisen strings ring clear, your former apprentice leading confidently. You feel no envy, only recognition. You remember your first trembling debut, your first fire, your first foreign guest, your erokai, your decision in the ledger room. You have lived through Tokugawa peace, Meiji transformation, and the reshaping of a nation, without ever leaving the district. The brutality of this life was never simply physical. It was constancy amid impermanence. And you endured. You lie down that night earlier than usual. The pillow is soft. Your body is tired, but not strained. Tomorrow, perhaps you will visit a tea house simply as honored presence. Not performer. Perhaps not. It no longer matters. You close your eyes gently. Outside, Tokyo continues reinventing itself. Inside, discipline remains stitched into every fold of silk. And you rest knowing something steady and true. You survived not because the world stood still, but because you learned how to move with it. You wake before the sun again. Not because you must rehearse. Not because you must scrub corridors or balance your neck on carved wood. You wake because dawn has always belonged to you. The okiya breathes softly around you, quiet footfalls, distant whispers, the faint rustle of silk being folded with careful hands. Somewhere in the house, a shamisen string is plucked tentatively by someone younger, someone still measuring her place in the rhythm of things. You sit upright slowly. Your knees protest gently. You nod to them. Yes, yes, we remember. It is widely known that traditional arts survive not through monuments, but through repetition, through bodies that carry them long enough to pass them on. Historians still debate whether districts like this one will fade into curated nostalgia or endure as living tradition. From where you sit, that question feels less urgent than it once did. Because you already know the answer. You rise and walk the corridor barefoot. Tatami holds the memory of your steps the way wood remembers fire, quietly. Without drama. The young geisha you once guided bows as you pass. Not deeply, but sincerely. Her collar is bright. Her sleeves long. She smells faintly of fresh powder and nervous anticipation. You remember that scent. You pause beside the practice room. Inside, another apprentice fumbles a chord. You enter softly. You adjust her fingers without speaking. You lift her wrist just slightly. Control. Always control. An unusual nuance. Survival in this world was never about perfection, it was about correction. Tiny, continuous corrections over years that shaped grace from awkwardness. You watch her try again. The note rings clearer. You nod once. Later, you sit near the entrance of the okiya as the city hums beyond the district's edges. Tokyo now, electric lines crisscrossing overhead. Brick buildings rising. Foreign words drifting occasionally into air that once knew only Edo's rhythms. But here, silk still rustles. Fans still unfold. Bows still slow and deepen. You think about the girl who once lay rigid against a wooden pillow, terrified of crushing her hair. About the fire that painted the sky orange. About the first foreign guest who asked for something authentic. About the ledger numbers that once kept you awake at night. The brutality of this life was never one thing. It was hunger and discipline. Debt and expectation. Rivalry and reinvention. Smoke and silk. And you survived all of it, not because you were stronger than everyone else, but because you learned to bend without breaking. Historians still debate whether geisha were empowered artists navigating restrictive systems or refined performers shaped entirely by them. Perhaps both are true. You know only this. You were never merely ornament. You were labor. You were discipline. You were continuity in a city that burned, modernized, renamed itself, and surged forward. And now, as the afternoon light softens across paper screens, you feel something you did not expect when you first stepped through the okiya's gate. Peace. Not the rigid peace of Tokugawa law. Not the uneasy peace after fire. A quieter one. You no longer need to prove grace. You embody it. The evening approaches gently. Lanterns will be lit soon. Music will rise from another room, carried by hands younger than yours but guided by the same invisible thread. You lie down before dusk fully settles. The pillow is soft. The air carries faint incense. Your breathing slows. You imagine lantern light dimming one by one along the street outside. You imagine silk folded neatly away. You imagine shamisen strings humming faintly into silence. The world beyond these walls will continue changing. It always has. But here, in the quiet rhythm of breath and memory, nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels unfinished. You survived. You endured. You adapted. And now, you rest. The sounds of Tokyo soften. The corridor grows still. Your eyes drift closed slowly, gently, as if lowering a fan at the end of a final dance. And in that hush, where lantern light fades into shadow and silk gives way to night air, you let go of the weight entirely. Just breathing. Just stillness. Just the faint echo of music lingering like a whisper. End of script. Sweet dreams.